Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, Debunking Mythology. Sattology means science of truth, a study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake, lie, or imagination. So one of the things which really comes in the mind is what is mythology and what is Sattology? So very simple description is there. Mythology is something which is made up or imposed upon you, and you are forced to believe it is true through multiple research papers. Okay, so there are so many research papers getting published to prove one lie after another lie after another lie. Sattology is something you don't have to prove anything. Little bit of intelligence, little bit of common sense, and little bit of some shraddha, and you can prove it immediately. I have a very special guest, and you know him, Acharya, Muni, Rishi, and wonderful research he has performed over the years. And sometimes people say that we should not assert, or we should not actually, assertion is the sign of honesty. And when you don't assert yourself, that means you're not sure about your own topic, and you're like a thalika bangan. Thalika, you know what is in English we'll call it, if you put a rolling ball on a plate, whichever direction you move, the ball will roll in that direction. So that is the sign of a person who is not convinced about his own work. So let us welcome Sri Nilesh Nilkant Oak.
Namaskar, Aditya ji. And the preamble that you made, I have quick two comments without you asking anything. So you talked about people writing many papers. Okay, so that's one. And the last one, you said thalika bangan, or the ball rolling into the plate, right? So that's one. That second, let me start with the second one. That's when people, when they are not convinced, or when they have not done original work, or not convinced, or not convinced, that's when you will get these examples. Without mentioning the names, I'll mention somebody will even borrow a claim that the person is not even aware he or she has borrowed something like, say, 3143 BC for Mahabharata, then he's your guest, so you don't have to say anything. You can be, very this. I'm just again using not as a vyakti, but as a vritti. And then somebody else says, but hold on, like some great individual like Kota Venkatachalam, who was also a Shankaracharya at one point, he took 3102 BC, which is great, right? I mean, somewhere you have to start. See what Kota Venkatachalam ji did, for example, you have to look at it in that context of 1950s.
That's right.
Okay. So he took 3102 BC, which is now we understand where it came from, has nothing to do with the historical aspect of it. It has to do everything with the Panchanga. And you and me will talk more about it. There is a phenomenal evidence where the 3102 BC came from, what's its significance. It's only astronomy significance, just like that Yuga thing, 432,000 years, or 4.32 million, or 4.32 billion as a kalpa. Only it has a context in the understanding astronomy. It has no relevance for the chronology of our itihasa, So just like this. So, but then somebody sees, oh, but so what are you going to say about Kota Venkatachalam ji? And the person has like the metaphor that you use, the ball rolling in a plate, like says, oh, okay, no, for the tradition and Shraddha and the gurus, I will also accept 3138 BC, and the person never comes to debate with me or wants to debate without even defining the rules. And so I say, well, what kind of this? I mean, have you decided you want to debate with me? Have you decided, is it 3138 BC that you're going to debate with me? Or is it 3143 BC? And by the way, the 3143 BC was done by P.V. Hole 20 years ago. Okay. And I have shown why that is wrong, but that's true for anything except 5561 BC. So this is one. The first point that you said about multiple publication, I wanted to just make a quick point about it. What used to happen, say, even in the Western tradition, the European Renaissance, and the so-called the scientific temper, and those are the words that we use in the Indian context, and many people who use that word scientific temperament in an Indian context are purely sarkari science babus. Okay, I'll not take the names, but that's what they are. Many people are in a very important post, or they were in important post. I think still they are. Somebody will be the head of some astronomy department or so, and just take like Arundhati Vasishta, somebody in here elementary school understands it, and they give a lecture to each other. A 9th grade student, 7th grade student, They understand it. People write books on it, of course, sometime showing how much ignorance they have. That is also a different story. But these people in a very well established place, like holding a title, PhDs, claiming they know astronomy, they have done research on Mahabharata, they will show utter ignorance. I mean, not just ignorance, incompetence in understanding something as beautiful, as phenomenal, as revolutionary, as innovative as Arundhati Vasishtha observation. So, what used to happen even in the Western development of say last 400 500 years, like with Francis Bacon and Hume, and like different departments were created, started going away from just studying Christian theology. Some basic sciences were introduced. Still, it was a very hit and miss kind of thing. So what they used to do is, if somebody has done something as a something new, they have done some experiment, how do they communicate? I mean, think of those times when there are no telephones and nothing. So they used to actually initially write letters to each other. Okay. And then eventually they said, but if I write a letter to somebody, it only goes to that one person. How about people write letters to one organization and they get published? And therefore you will see now today, these days, the names are going away, but many of the so-called that peer reviewed journals, and they were peers of each other, like somebody studying something in France, another person is studying in Germany, third person is studying in England, and so on, in Spain and Denmark and so on. So they would write to that one particular organization. Literally, they used to write a letters to the members of this junta, this club, and those letters got published. Therefore, many of these journals, their names are like Elmer letters, Faraday letters, physics letters, polymers letters, and so on. That's how the names were. The point I want to make it is, that time, what used to happen? They were writing by hands. Okay, everyone doesn't have a typewriter. I don't know exactly when the typewriter came into being, but even when it came, they were writing by hands. Even with the typewriters, they will make a mistakes, and then slowly the things improved. You could get a white ink to change it, and I don't know if you have seen a typewriter. I have, although I never used it. So it was a very, what you can say, a very elementary technology. So many people actually used to write also, like write this. And what happened if it gets like edits, like now we do it in the Word, but that time they will cut it, they will erase it. And if it's too much, they put it aside and they start writing the new one. So therefore these words come, like, the raw copy, and then making a fair copy, proofs, proofreading, and so on and so forth. Karl Popper says something very interesting. He says, in those times when people were writing letters, sometime when they write a wrong letter or too many corrections, so they put it aside, and they literally used to put it in the waste paper basket. Okay, so they said, no, that's like, I put efforts in it, but it's not worthy to send it out. What Karl Popper has discussed, and this is like going back, say 60 plus years. So it's not like something happening now. This the dogma and the rot, that is indeed occurring within the peer-reviewed papers and community, is not recent. Its intention was right. So he said the people in those days, when they used to write letters, what they used to throw in the waste basket. Now nobody throws anything in waste basket. If you have done some experiments, even the experiments gone wrong, you want to still publish it. And that's how you said multiple things they will publish. They're right. If they have done something, they're saying, why waste it? If I have typed like a 15 pages, I'm going to publish it. And that's how things gets done. So back to you, and we can get to the subject that you want to ask, and then what I would like to discuss.
See, one of the amazing thing is, like, when you talk about the universities like Oxford and Cambridge, and looking at their content and the courses and over the years of research, it is clear that they are trying to establish Christianism. And over the years, Christianism has consumed even Europe, destroyed the Greeks, destroyed the Romans, and took everything they had, plus created something different for them. Like, for example, like the 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 Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, all this Trinity, all these created from other philosophers who took it from East, from Bhagavad Gita and other places, and removed reincarnation, which Socrates believed, removed karma, which Plato believed, and the Socrates forms they replaced with the political ideology. So now today we are living in the, if you look at the political side of it, which is a constitutional republic,
Hmm.
which was an Aristotelian thought to reject the democracy of the Plato, Athenian democracy, because he saw everybody getting killed. And unfortunately, these are the people, they comment on Ramayana Mahabharat as a mythology. They say that it is mythology, and some of the Indians, Indologists or Indians, majority of the Indians today who study in the convent school, they, for them, like their questions are, have you read Mahabharat in Sanskrit? Or has anyone read in Sanskrit?
Hmm.
There are millions of people watching this show who have read in Sanskrit. You read in Sanskrit, I read in Sanskrit. And so the and they use the Western books who are commenting on those Sanskrit. Like there's India Today published one book. There's an author, a British author, and who is blasphemous against Draupadi, blasphemous against Kunti, blasphemous against Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, and those are the people becoming the mainstream thought. So, like, from a point of, I want to seek your view on this. So for these people who get surprised at whether anyone has read Sanskrit, they themselves have not read it, and they are the ones who write in important newspapers all over the world proclaiming the mythology or of Ramayana Mahabharata. What is your view on this?
Okay, like too many things, and I'm not sure if there is a specific question. But say right now, there are people. I cannot speak, communicate in Sanskrit per se, but I mean, I understand if somebody gives a lecture, the basic subject, not some too complex subject. A subject by basic, I mean, it can be very complex subject, but something that I am aware of. For example, I can tell you if somebody is giving a lecture in Sanskrit, okay, on say chemistry, physics, quantum physics, theoretical physics, cosmology, I will understand everything. I mean, when I say everything, I mean 70% plus. Even generic subjects. So, for example, when I travel in India, and I have seen people who can communicate. No, they don't do it because they are not snobs, who wear it on their sleeve. But they fluently, very comfortably, just like you and me are talking right now, they will speak in Sanskrit. And I understand 70%. Now, somebody will say, oh, how do you understand if you never learned? Because officially, I never learned, not for even a single day. And honestly, I do not know the answer to that. I don't understand, I don't know the grammar right now, but I would say that is the blessings of Vyasa, Valmiki, and Vasishta and Vishwamitra, whatever it is, the prarabdha of the past life. But I understand it. In fact, like Ashwini and I, when we travel, and Ashwini also understands it now. By the way, she took some courses in Sanskrit, and I don't think she taking the courses in Sanskrit might have helped, but I don't think that was the main reason. I think it's like, it's like assimilation. Like if you go and live in Mexico without actually going to school in 6 months or 1 year, you're going to start speaking in Spanish, it's something similar. Now, this is a somewhat more modified assimilation. So that happens. Now, for example, you asked me about the people here giving their own interpretation. Look at the translations, like without taking the names, because immediately these people, their ego is so, like, what you call poor, made out of poor quality glass, or poor quality polystyrene plastic, that it can break, just at a little touch. That's why I don't take people's names as much as possible. I have no problem taking people's name, and if people do idiocy and nonsense, then I'm very happy to take their names. But because here the subject is different, many translations, like from Sanskrit to English, and you're talking about Western Indologist and academic departments, okay. Before criticizing them, let me give you that uh, they start with this whole assumption that this is all mythology and story, and as you said, the agenda is set, whether it's a Oxbridge, Oxford and Cambridge, or whether it's a Harvard, Chicago, Berkeley, Columbia. I mean, these are axis of evil as far as the development, or as far as the study of Indian civilization is concerned. You mentioned University of Paris, yeah, absolutely. And some of the conferences that I were there, these are the same forces you will see into their own junta. It's just amazing. And again, I get kick out of it, but when I'm presenting, they're like literally scoffing. These professors are scoffing. Oh, yeah, of course you think like that. Yeah. I said, do you have anything against it? And these conferences, again, in their favor, they do a lot of tapasya. In fact, it's surprising, Adityaji, for this reason, because, or maybe it's not surprising, I don't know, they get money for it. It is all agenda driven that they're doing it. Okay, they want to call it mythology. They somewhere believe that it is a mythology. When they know that it's not mythology, still their whole agenda, their research purpose is to call it a mythology. Okay, I don't know if you are aware of, and I don't know if that's the question you're going to ask me, but there is a recently uh, an Indian student at Cambridge did a PhD, and he's claiming supposedly he made some innovation, some solved a long-term problem. So I think there, Aditya getting the terminologies from me, like, you have to have a tough unsolved problem, then only your PhD thesis has some meaning. So I don't know if they're watching my talks. I hope they are. Actually, I don't know if the Indian guy who did the PhD was there, but his professor was there at the one of the conferences at Oxford. I participated and presented two papers, original papers, and I'll tell you what those subjects are in, I think, December 2018. Uh, in fact, you didn't ask that question, but let me just take this digression. That professor also presented one of the afternoon. By the way, it's a well-organized conference. What I find with many conferences, but especially in the Indian context or indology-related subjects, again, the exception would be what Rajiv Malhotraji had done, like the Swadesh Indology conferences. They were also well thought out, well put forward, enough time left for people to interact with the audience afterwards, discussions, and so on, variety of things. But on the other hand, many other conferences that sometimes I'm even part of, meaning in the organization committee and so on, the emphasis appears to be on a volume. And I don't blame them, because partly it is the idea is to provide a platform for people to present. So if somebody wants to present, the opportunity should be there, and they should not be limited by the number. But back to this, say, Oxford conference, and I'm thinking of a specific Oxford conference, it was well organized. I mean, there are people from all over the world, and the number 3 days plus or something like that, and the number of papers presented, Aditya was a very small number. I don't know exactly how much it is, like maybe 18, maybe 20, maybe not more than 30. Because of that, and it will run into the evening also. So because of that, say two people will present the paper, 20-25 minutes each, and lo and behold, then there is essentially like a 90-minute break. Okay, and nice food is served and all that, during which you can discuss it. So that's one positive. Another positive is, even when their whole idea is to trash the Indian civilization, no matter which angle they use, okay, the amount of efforts and the detailed level of work that they do, extracting references and so on and so forth, is actually praiseworthy. So purely on a tapasya, I will give you the marks. Now, let me just conclude that with this professor who is now in the light because of this, all the hoopla. In fact, also let me tell you why blame them. In terms of impressing the deracinated and inferiority complex filled Indians, whether it is the Harvard, Chicago, Columbia, Berkeley axis of evil, or in Indology, or it's Oxbridge, Paris axis of evil, they have done a very impressive job, very successful job, to the extent our so-called educated Indians, okay, and these are not necessarily the rabid communist and leftist. I mean, they will do into their own stupidity. I mean, that's just given. But even the so-called pro-Indic side people, they hear something happening, something at Oxford, something at Cambridge, they will not understand the strategic game, but they will hear some news like Harvard, Chicago, this and that, and they go orgasmic. Literally, there is no other word. I mean, like, they are so impressed and something like this without even knowing what they are impressed about. So this particular reference that I just mentioned, I don't know his whole name. Last name is Raj Popat. He did just finished his PhD on something to do with the Panini, one rule of Panini Vyakaran, like the Ashtadhyayi. And he found some innovation, whatever it is. Now that I listened to another talk with Neeraj Attri and one Mr. Kerkar, I have a now better idea what it is referring to. And if we get a time, we'll discuss it. But I also want to discuss something else. So maybe another time we will do it. But that presentation is worth watching between Neeraj Attri and Shri Kerkar. That gave me some idea. Okay, what are they talking about? And I mean, I'm scoffing now. My point is, this is not to put anyone down, but with my very limited, almost non-existent, which I will admit, my knowledge of Panini Ashtadhyayi and a Vyakaran in general of any language, not just Sanskrit, even with the non-existent knowledge, I would say I was like really sort of thinking, so what's the innovation here? That is not to undermine what he has done, because frankly, I cannot still say that I have understood it. But see, the rules of Vyakaran are also man-made rules, just like the rules of the traffic, like how long a certain green signal will last, or what does the white dot means, what does the yellow solid line means, what does two white lines mean, what two yellow lines means. Yes, there is a logic behind it, but they are still man-made. And therefore, you find what they call a non-Paninian way of grammar. People even in our times have done it. People definitely, sometimes people look at our ancient narratives and say, hey, that's a Paninian, what you call say, application. Now people again confuse that too. Like, so something is a Paniniya, they say, oh, that must be before Panini. Well, it doesn't have to be like that, because Panini is not the one who created Vyakaran. Panini is the one who documented Vyakaran. And of course, he's a genius par excellence. That is not the point. But Panini did not create Vyakaran. Okay, that is the misunderstanding of some people. But quickly, one more last point. So this professor was there at the conference. I do not remember if this Mr. or now Dr. Raj Popat was there. And this is a he has just one paper in hand, no slides, or if there were slides, I forgot now. And he talked about something, and now he's an Italian professor, but I don't think the accent was an issue. I kind of got bored, but hey, that may be because that subject is of not my interest. But I was giving my full attention to understand, because these are the places, I mean, conferences are the opportunities where you learn about other areas. So I was paying attention, trying my best, but I'm not grabbing into anything. And people are just laughing in between, the students, professors, other professors coughing, some humor going on in between, and I couldn't even understand the humor. And I don't think my comprehension of English or Italian accented English is that bad. I can speak broken Italian and broken English. So I asked my co-author, one of the co-presenter, I presented two papers, I'll not go into those today, and I said, hey, do you understand what's this going on? And when the presentation was over, which was like 20-30 minutes max, and I said, can you summarize it for me? And I'll tell you, Adityaji, what he summarized. Okay, this is the presentation of that Cambridge professor. He said, bottom line, he's saying, of course, he might be oversimplifying, my co-presenter. He's saying Panini is illiterate. Okay, so I'll just stop on that. Back to you. And if you have something to ask, fine, and then I'll get into my subject.
No, Panini is illiterate, so there is a very good information.
And I was saying, wow. And there was so much humor about it too,
Yeah, it's like the educated illiterates which are roaming around in the streets nowadays.
Yeah.
Like saying that. Yes, you can start the presentation.
Start this presentation. So what I want to talk then is something that, like people like to hear about, something hot from the press, they say, this is hot from the peer reviewed papers, So hold on. What did I do? Hot from the peer reviewed papers. Okay. So this was like another Twitter thing going on, like people see what Aditya people do is, which is good and bad, I would say. But those people who may be following my research and all that, they will also go, which is good, because most of these folks who waste my time are on my mute. in Twitter world, they are on my mute list, so I don't see their post or anything. But these individuals, some of those who follow me, they will take a, like, snip or what you call that, copy paste type of thing, and send it to me and say, hey, here it is. What are your thoughts? So sometime I will make a comments. Anyways, what I want to talk today is just a title, I would say, Antiquity of Cotton and Indian Civilization. As a fundamental, we understand the antiquity of Sanskrit, which truly we don't know. As simple as that. Yes, it is a synthetically manufactured language, very sophisticated language. Sanskrita, the word itself tells you that. But how old it is, we truly don't know. If we start from this, then we are following the wisdom of Ishopanishad. Okay, one who doesn't know knows, and one who knows doesn't know type of thing. We truly don't know. But once we say that, we can actually start looking at the evidence to say, hey, I still don't know how old it is, but definitely it is older than 22,000 years. Definitely it is older than 46,000 years, and so on and so forth. We can at least say that. But truly we don't know. Same thing with the Indian astronomy, like how old it is. Yeah, I can say definitely older than 28,000 years, definitely older than 38,000 years, by 6,000 years, 14,000 years, 19,000 years. I mean, 34,000 years, like, Rupa Bhattiji's work, my work, Anil Narayananji's work, Dr. Anil Narayananji. We can talk about this, but we don't know. So those are the two foundations for Indian civilization, and the third most important foundation, many times, and people know it, but many times people don't appreciate it enough. Like, they may appreciate astronomy if they understand it, which is a very few. They will also understand Sanskrit, which is also a small number. But so I think, Aditya, I don't know if it has happened to Indian astronomy yet. To the best of my knowledge, it has not happened. But with Sanskrit, there is a lot of snobbery. Okay, when I travel in India, like, the people should, the fact people can say something like 5 sentences in Sanskrit, I mean, that's great, that's appreciable. But they think, therefore, they know everything. So it's like somebody who can speak English immediately feeling that, oh, therefore he understands chemical engineering, because chemical engineering books are written in English, or quantum mechanics, or Indian philosophy, or any other philosophy, just because they know English and the philosophy exists in English. That's the naivety. But let me talk about back to this. So I said those two pillars. The third one is very uh, jnani. I mean, I don't know what's the right word, but you used all those words like Maharshi and Brahmarshi. The great individuals, superior intellectual individuals that the Bharata Varsha, Bharata Bhumi produced. We are so lucky. Like, not to belabor the subject, I would say the likes of Valmiki and likes of Vyasa and Kalidas and so on. Okay. That is why we are in this fortunate position to discuss this. Okay, so now this is related to the very recent paper. This paper from this is this. I mean, they may be from different universities, but the first author is from Stanford, by the way. Okay, so this paper came like 10 days ago into Frontiers of Plant Science, the journal, peer-reviewed and all that good stuff for people who are stuck into that rot of peer-reviewed. Again, because I use very tough words, I say, hey, the peer-reviewed principle is correct, but it has really gotten to a very bad level right now. Okay, in almost every field, but especially if you, even it is true in science and technology, engineering, but if you go outside that, then it's truly a pathetic situation. Anyways, this is not a comment on this paper, by the way. Actually, it's a good paper, very good paper. And the context I want to use is Antiquity of Cotton and Indian Civilization. So, for example, we may use Itihasa, Ramayana, Mahabharata to talk about the antiquity of Indian civilization. We may talk about Brahmana text, astronomy, and so on. We look at the empirical agriculture evidence, we look at the empirical navigation evidence, and we talk about the antiquity. Here it is the antiquity of cotton, okay, one of the raw material ingredient, and using that to understand the antiquity of Indian civilization. What this paper says, the title is here, The Earliest Cotton Fibers and Pan-Regional Context in the Near East. The earliest cotton fibers, now earliest is not the correct word. Earliest at that place that they found, it doesn't mean earliest in the whole world or anything like this. Okay, or even if it is earliest, it is the earliest cotton fibers found. And in the minute, I will tell you that it is not earliest. Okay, earliest fiber, Mehergarh, it is found going back to 6000 BCE, 6000, 5000 BCE, which is a Mahabharata times. Okay, not a surprise. Shouldn't be a surprise to anyone who reads Mahabharata. And but the next one, they say pan-regional contacts. This is very charming part of this paper, that they found something in Israel. Think of as Israel as a simple Desha Kala Patra. It was somewhere found in Jordan. So Israel, Jordan, Syria, that area. And the fiber, the cotton fiber that is used there, the authors think it came from India. Okay, it came from Sindhu Saraswati civilization. Of course, they call it Indus Valley civilization. Okay, truly the Sindhu Saraswati civilization. Even Sindhu Saraswati civilization is a wrong nomenclature. Basically, they should say Hindu civilization, Hindutva civilization, Indian civilization, Bharatiya civilization. Okay, you can't just take one river and suddenly do it. In fact, Harappa is what? Harappa is not on the bank of Sindhu. It is on the bank of a Ravi, that too even the old bed of Ravi. Okay, nevertheless. Okay, but very good paper. What is interesting is, just like that research of Raj Popat or anything that comes from these certain snobby places, or the places which have attained a snob level, okay, anything comes, and as I said, well, they will do it. And I don't think, Aditya ji, they themselves take themselves that seriously. I will tell you this from my interactions with all these places, practically the places that I just mentioned, right from Colombia to what else I said. And then now there are many places, but Columbia, Chicago, Berkeley, Harvard. Okay, let's take those four here. And then Oxford, Cambridge there, University of Paris also I have connections, Max Planck Institute I have connections, right? And few other universities. I'll tell you, in all fairness to them, I mean, they may have agenda and that's all fine, but they don't take themselves that seriously. Okay, they are not into that, they are into some superior thing. Now they may want to create the impression for others, but our folks, Indians, okay, and I'm saying not even the likes of communist and all, they want to also go there, like the whole funny story about that lady from NDTV, or she was given a fake news that she's becoming professor at Harvard. So they also feel gaga. But many pro-India people also, like, they're just dreaming, when can I do something in indology at this? I get emails all the time. My point is, the hype that is created is like Indians. You see, if I, like, through this conversation, I'm trying to say, guys, don't fall for the hype. Guess what I am saying is going to fall on deaf ears. People don't want to hear the truth. That is the problem. Even after listening to this talk, Aditya ji, because of this talk, I will get 50 emails saying, my son wants to go, sir, I want to send my son to study Indian history in American famous university, which university he or she should apply, and stuff like that. And I'm saying, God, you didn't listen to me. It's like people listening to the 4 types of yoga and yoga dogma, okay, for 1 hour to me, or 4 parts as we did the series, and then finally asking, so Nileshji, that's all good, but please tell me when the Kali Yuga ending, which means the fellow did not understand a damn word I said for 1 hour. That's the kind of level we have. And therefore, when I say Nyaya Vijnana Darshane, and Aditya ji, someone like you have to say, Nilesh, which world do you live in? People don't understand Nyaya, people don't understand Vijnana. Just Hari Bhajana is the way to increase their level, and then on their own they will understand Nyaya Vijnana. But back to this. So very good paper. What they found, so just from an area perspective, is bit small map here, but this is Mediterranean. This is, think of this as Israel, Jordan, and this place called Tel Saf. I don't know how to say it, Staff or something, Tel Staff. That is here, right on Mediterranean, you can say Jordan, okay? There they found a cotton fiber, okay? They're saying, if we read it, let me highlight, okay? Earliest known evidence of this non-indigenous plant. When they say non-indigenous, they're saying non-local, not local to this eastern part of Mediterranean, okay? Now, where they say it's coming from, very likely, bit of a probability there, coming from Gossypium arboretum, which is the Indian cotton variety, okay, the original variety. Now there are many genetic modifications and so on, okay. Just like even the other variety that you see, Gossipum herbaceum, the African variety, which is also mixed variety, Indian variety. Africa, typically they are referring to Egypt, for example. Okay, the long uh, length cotton or something, they say long fiber, short fiber, and so on. Anyways, now see this Dorian Fuller, she's at Cambridge too, by the way. Okay, totally different issue. Not subject that, because this paper is from Stanford and other guys. But Dorian Fuller has done a lot of work related to domestication of plants and staple foods like beans and rice and all that. Very good work. I do not always agree with her dating. I don't mean the empirical dating done by carbon thing, but the inferences she draws based on that for where the agriculture began and so on. But that's not a subject today. But very impressive research in general, directionally, Dorian Fuller, okay, at Cambridge. So this one, they are saying that, hey, this is very likely from India. And now, if you know the timing, you will be surprised. I mean, you will be not surprised, but the audience may. And that's where it is like people say, oh, wow, I didn't know that. Oh, that seems to expand the timeline. If every single paper, Aditya, then every single new paper comes out, and if that surprises people, that startles the people, then that means because people even don't know how to study. People don't know how to think. People don't know how to draw inferences. People don't understand what is empirical evidence. People don't know how to connect the dots. But people even don't study. People don't even read. That's why they are like, oh, wow, I did. What do you mean you didn't know that? This, for example, like I'll just read that line. This is from, let's see, where do I start? Yeah, the earliest known evidence for actual cotton fibers comes from the aceramic Neolithic period. You just ignore that. At the Mehergarh, which is in Balochistan, burial site in central Balochistan, Pakistan. Here, cotton fiber threads used to string copper beads were recovered, dating to the first half of the 6th millennium BCE. Do you know where that 6 millennium BC is? This is a 20-year-old paper, by the way, roughly within the range of 6,000, 5,500 BCE. Bingo. Does that give a deja vu to somebody? Mahabharata times. The earliest known cotton fabric is a small fragment of cloth adhering to the lid of a small silver vase found in Mohenjo-daro. Again, another one going back to, this is a cotton fabric as opposed to just a cotton thread, going to 3000 BCE, Mohenjo-daro. That is also, look at the date, Adityaji, 1929, about 100 years ago. So 100 years have gone by. Somebody considers themselves expert in this Indian civilizational narratives, research, and so on, and they don't even know this. Okay, there is a bigger problem with this. This is a problem, Adityaji. They will ask, where is the archaeology evidence? But then you show the archaeology evidence like this, they say, yeah, okay, whatever. Because I don't know what idea they have. What I think now, based on this, is that literally, they are incapable, incompetent to understand archaeology evidence. Almost like to them, it should say, and there should be a board at Mohenjo-daro next to that fiber saying, hey, this is the cloth that was worn by 30th descendant of Bhagwan Krishna. And they say, okay, oh, wow. Actually, that is the status of epigraph. Epigraphs are basically a understanding of the people that time. Some expert, suppose if I'm the expert, okay, in somebody's court, and now they're writing epigraph, so they come to me and they ask me like, hey, when the Matsya Avatar happened? I say, I don't know. They said, no, how come you don't know? You are our guru here. You ought to tell. So I say, well, I don't know, but I like to think maybe 60,000 years ago. And so now on the epigraph, they say Matsya Avatar was born 60,000 years ago, or whatever that time Panchanga they are using. And now this becomes a truth. That is the story of an epigraph. It is the assumption of the expert, assumption of the people, opinion of those individuals. Okay. But these are carbon dated stuff. Okay. Going back to 6,000 people. So therefore, this is from this paper. So what they're saying is now they got additional evidence because this was right in the Mohenjo-daro, right into Balochistan, which is like India as a home of cotton, and it may not be the only home of cotton, is there. But now the greatness of this paper or the aha moment of this paper is that Actually, not only they were producing cotton fiber, they were producing cotton, but they were exporting it as far as, based on the available data, to Israel, Jordan, Syria. Now, Adityaji, to other people, it's like, again, wow, oh, that's just fantastic, amazing. I can't believe it. Do you know why? Because they don't read Mahabharata. They don't read Ramayana. I'm going to show you through this evidence. Because if they were reading Mahabharata and therefore they know how to use the evidence, it will take them to 5561 BC and nowhere else. Now they look at this date and say, yeah, there's nothing surprising. Bhagadatta came from Mesopotamia, what we call Mesopotamia, Iraq, Baghdad and that area. And there were many other kings who came further westward to Syria and Jordan and possibly Egypt and so on. We see the influence of Rama Ikshwaku dynasty going all the way to Mitannis and Hittite and then Egypt. Therefore, Mitannis and Egyptians had used to have a relationship, like a prince marrying the princess here and there and so on. In a very recent times, I'm talking 2000, 3000, 4000, 5000 years ago. And we are talking this relationship happening, migrations happening 14,000 plus years ago. So no surprise if you know how to connect the dots. That is that Shruti Pratyaksham Aitiyam Anumanam Chatushtayam Pramaneshu Anavasthanad Vikalpat Savirajyate. Quadrangulation must be done. Otherwise, somebody looking at some one rotten fiber, people have a very sexy concepts, Adityaji, about this. They think like, archaeology meaning it's like a very sophisticated and everything has been written for you, like written there like a plaque, like a epigraph. No, I mean, if you literally look at the samples, and people should go and read this original paper, the one I showed you on the first line, people should look, actually, people should go in the lab, like AMS, like accelerated mass spectrometry, and see what is this, like a small sample, few milligrams, grams of sample that you churn around, do various things, calibrate AMS, and then rerun through them. It sounds very outside, like, it's like, oh, wow, as if like it's a sure thing. Again, it's an authority fallacy if people are not very careful. Okay, so now this fiber, like going back to 3000, many people will again misunderstood. Do you know what they will say? Based on this, many of our folks too, by the way. So if some, what is that, cotton fabric was found in Mohenjo-daro 3000 BC, and let's say that is the earliest known cotton fabric. So here the authors are using a proper language, but people who draw the inferences on the TV channels and newspapers are really, really do a disservice to this kind of good research. They will say, oh, the cotton fabric was invented in 3000 BC. No, my friend, the cotton fabric piece that we found is dated to 3000 BCE. That doesn't say that it was invented, but that's how people draw the conclusion and therefore create a chaos out of the chronology and antiquity. Quick, this is the site, by the way, where they found this fabric and so on and so forth. Okay, so what happens? A very sophisticated place, but over a period of time when it's not in use, it just collapses very fast. You can see in America, but also in India, like, some of the villages where, I have seen it, like my Mausi's house, like, my mother's sister, where I lived for 2 years in Konkan, beautiful place, right into the mountain Sayadris. I visited, now this is again also going back to 10 years, and nobody lives there, but I have so many good memories connected to that place. I just wanted to go there, and my driver was there and another friend. And once we went to that house, nobody's inside. I cannot even go inside, but I just sent them. I said, guys, stay there until I come back. I just sat there, almost like you can say doing a dhyana, samadhi, whatever, just connecting with the place for like 45 minutes. My point is, it's only possibly like a 20 years since nobody's living there, but essentially that whole place is like ready to be dissolved, so to say. So now imagine, so we have to use that viveka when we look at this old place. Actually, if you look at this picture, very impressive, considering that this place is going back to 7,500 years, to the time of Mahabharata, where in Israel, in Jordan. Okay, so this is the context. Otherwise, you say, oh, that looks too primitive. What people don't know is right now they can go to very sophisticated places. Why sophisticated, Aditya? Like go to New York, certain sections of New York, certain sections of LA, certain sections of Atlanta, Chicago. My God, I mean, how, I mean, you will be scared to visit that places. Okay. So we talk of sophistication, but very non-sophisticated things exist right in the midst of us. So that's the point. Very, very sophisticated here, just from the top view. Going back to Mahabharata times. Another question I get frequently, Aditya, which is this. People ask, so Nilesh, so yeah, okay, I understand, I read your book, watch your videos, I do watch Sattology series, 100 plus talks, and okay, with some combination of Shraddha, Pramana, Prajna, I am convinced Mahabharata war in 5561 BC, Ramayana 12,209 BC. But I have a question. So if this civilization was so well established, sophistication, how come there is nothing else happening anywhere around the world? Okay, I want to answer those questions here too. Well, look at this, for example. This is a place that would be considered based on the climate studies of those times just after the Younger Dryas. They will be considered as very inhospitable places, okay, for living. But actually, if you look at the evidence and even the archaeology evidence, where people are stuck around the world, especially in India, into dirt archaeology. And honestly, they don't understand either dirt archaeology, or common sense, scientific acumen, logical reasoning. But they're saying, oh, where is the archaeology evidence? Well, damn it, here is the archaeology evidence. Now, suddenly you show it to them. I say, well, that's not impressive. I'm not convinced. What the hell it means? And why do I care whether you are convinced or not? The evidence is there. Because what are you comparing this evidence against? What? That some other place you are convinced about. It's like, my dear friend, you don't know anything and you are not convinced. Well, why am I surprised? No, I'm not surprised. My point is, this is a place that would be considered inhospitable or not as weather-wise a favorable place like India was, whether 14,000 years ago, 7,500 years ago, Ramayana times, Mahabharata times, before that, Rigvedic times. You find a well-established civilization, people living, in a very sophisticated fashion with grain storage, just like Mehergarh has it, going back to 7,000 BC and so on. So it's not only in India. People say, oh yeah, well, people have a problem. They don't think it's sophisticated enough in India, going back to 5,000 BC and 7,000 BC. Because again, the Viveka Buddhi is lacking. Just they have no experience. What are you expecting? You are not going to see a suddenly sophisticated palace still standing. That is the misunderstanding. They will say, what about the pyramids? Well, pyramids were built in a certain way. You can see the same thing if you go to what is that place in Madhya Pradesh? Uh, I'm Bhimbetaka caves. Yeah, they have the marks, they have these shelters going back to 1 million years, 100,000 years, 130,000 years, 40,000 years, 10,000 years. They are there. How many of the audience has gone to Bhimbetaka? Okay, so yeah, then you can compare Bhimbetaka with a Egyptian pyramid. Now you'll see Egyptian pyramid are 5,000, 10,000. Bhimbetaka is going to 100,000 and a million years and so on. So a place that is not that considered climatically very comfortable for human living, a very vibrant civilization is existing there. Just not so long ago, one in a private conversation, Aditya a archaeologist contacted, and he said, "But where is you are saying Ramayana for 12,000 BCE? Where is just the same question? Like they asked for Mahabharata. This is for Mahabharata answer, and I'm going to show you for Ramayana. Where is that something similar happening around the world? Like how come it is not there?" I said, "Well, have you heard of Natufian?" And now this guy's false ego is hurt. He says, I'm an archaeologist. I said, well, then you are not reading your stuff. Natufian culture, again discovered more than 100 years ago, is also taking you to 15,000 BC, before Ramayana, during Ramayana, after Ramayana. like whole things. Very well established agriculture civilization right in this area. People don't read, or if they read, they don't understand, they don't comprehend, they don't know how to connect the dots. Okay, that's the problem. So what I'm saying is, am I criticizing them? I'm saying, no, guys, forget the experts. Don't fall for the expert fallacy. Don't fall for the degrees. Each one of us, if you truly care, if you don't care, I mean, even if you care, but you don't have the ability, just take for Shraddha, start chanting. That's my advice. Find the right guru. Uh, Develop Shraddha then, because you are not capable of using other methods. Okay. But those who are, and I would encourage them, get to understanding Pramana, get to understanding Nyaya get to understanding the logic of scientific discovery. Quickly, the conclusion of this paper, very good, is so this is a corroborative evidence for something that has already been well established, and to that extent it is good. The additional factor is the trade that is going on across this region, which is a surprise to modern mind, which is devoid of the knowledge of Mahabharata and Ramayana. But if those people who understand Ramayana and Mahabharata, not only from the so-called blabbering talk of spiritual values only. What kind of nonsense? Mahabharata, Vyasadeva is saying there is man, there is everything, whatever you want to know, it is there in the Mahabharata. But our hero, our Hindu hero, only wants to know the spiritual value. Okay, that's like going to Kamadhenu, or that's going to Kalpavruksha and saying, I want a chocolate, piece of a chocolate. Okay, that's like, what do you say, it's a worthless intellect. That's why that happens. Nevertheless, what they're saying is, if some of these cotton fibers were of textiles or strings originated in Indus Valley during the early 5th millennium BC, this is the language of science. They are saying that it is from Indus Valley based on however they figured it out. I don't know how they did that or how to figure this out. So they know it, but they will always use the language, and that's how the language should be used in science. Originated or appears. For example, when I talk about 5561 BCE, in my conviction, subjective and objective conviction, I'm convinced about 5561 BCE. But when she said, Nilesh, are you sure? And are you saying there is no other date? I said, no, I'm not saying that. I am saying among all the 130 dates, 5561 is the best by any marks of any criteria. By any criteria, 5561 BC is not only best, but 1,000 miles removed from all the other dates. But can there be a better date? Yeah, I'm open to it. That is science. So in that language, they're saying textiles, if the if words come from there, some of the fibers were textiles strings originated in Indus Valley during the early 5th millennium BC, because the dating of that cotton fiber, whatever they found here in Jordan, is dated to 5200 BCE to 4700 BC. That's the range. Now, many researchers don't even understand the range. They say, oh, so we can't exactly say it is from there. No, you don't understand how research is done, how empirical work is done, how dating is done, and why there is a variation. That's what it means when somebody says that kind of foolish statement. Okay, so it is from that early 5th millennium BC, referring to 5200 BC to 4700 BC. But let's go further. One would have to ask if the timing of cotton domestication in its source, meaning India, may have been earlier than 3rd millennium BCE, as previously suggested. So there are other studies, and I'll show you in a minute, that actually there are already, it's been established that the cotton goes as far back as 5000 BC, the Mahabharata times. Again, some people draw extremely idiotic inferences. Therefore, Adityaji, they think it was invented at that time. No, we don't know that. We know that it definitely existed in 5000 BCE, but it could have been invented a long time. Another quick point, the wild cotton products, they say, may not be established agriculture for cotton, or if wild cotton products were more prevalent than previously thought. This should not be seen as any sign of backwardness. And I talked about this somewhere else, where I said, if you look at the non-Alfonso variety of mango, where the place where I grew up on the west coast of India, they were wild varieties. Almost they were grown in a wild fashion, but doesn't mean like they automatically happened. No, people would actually plant it, or they will plant enough that some of them just come up. But so it's so like they are growing, so they are protected in some way, otherwise they will be cut. Therefore, you have a tremendous wild variety. And so if you have enough of these wild resources, then you don't need to plant. Then all you do is a harvesting. And there is a evidence of such harvesting of grains, harvesting of beans, harvesting of many other things in Indian subcontinent, empirical evidence, archaeology evidence, polyliths, and so on, going back to 43,000 BCE. Now, why I'm saying this? People have to connect the dots to understand the antiquity. And somebody says, oh, okay, but just what is the point of looking at some polyliths of some grain? And how can you say, therefore, we had a civilization? I mean, the question is a stupid question, because who told you that this is the only evidence? You start collecting evidence and group it together. And now, based on that evidence, you still have to draw the inference. If you are going to take in a foolish charvaka fashion, just like what you see is what it is, so only there is a seed, nothing else, you will never grow. You will always remain an idiot charvak, and we have those in our times too, by the way. Many people even proudly use that name charvaka, that also is there, but that's another subject. Okay. This is from Wikipedia. Okay, even Wikipedia, now it will do its own foolishness, but Wikipedia also, you will see, even that data made it. And I can tell you, I don't know who this reference 12 is, but Adityaji, to your point, this will be like a very likely from the 4 universities of America and 2 or 3 universities of Europe that I mentioned. Somebody will have some connection there. A person who studied there, a professor there, a PhD student there, has written a book, who studies there. Therefore, only it will made it to Wikipedia. Okay, now in this case, it's impressive, but it can be very awkward also. I'll give you an example of that. You look at, I mean, somebody should go to Wikipedia and look at these references. You will see that axis of evil connection of Western Indology or their lackeys in India. Otherwise, Wikipedia will not accept it. That's how biased Wikipedia is. Okay. Anyways, the latest archaeological discovery, this is from Wikipedia, I'm reading it, dating of early cotton cultivation and the use of cotton to 5000 BCE. By latest, they are not referring to this paper. So it is already well known. Some of these by latest is well known, like going back to 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 100 years, by the way. The Indus Valley civilization started cultivating cotton by 3000 BC. You see where this comes from? That Mohenjo-daro reference. So see how the two references next to each other, there is no congruence between those two references. And if people don't believe, look at the third reference. And that's the only reason I'm showing it, guys. My goal is not to tell you everything that you want to know about the cotton, that you must figure it out if you are curious by reading on your own. But I'm showing you the red lights that you need to watch for. Look at the third statement. Cotton was mentioned in Hindu hymns in 1500 BCE. Well, okay, so hey, they did this like 5000 BC. Then they started cultivating in 3000 BC, but for next 1500 years, they did not think of mentioning it in any Hindu hymns. What kind of stupidity is that? The problem is, this statement is coming from some empirical data. This statement is coming from Mohenjo-daro. This statement is coming from Mehergarh. And do you know where this statement is coming from? Coming from Max Muller and his pawns. Who says that Rigveda was composed in 1500 BC on the bank of non-existent Saraswati, but still it has a descriptions of great flowing Saraswati. I mean, what kind of level of stupidity is this? But see, that's how those 3 statements will come together. And I would give this as a wonderful assignments. Again, people wants to do it, but I give the assignments, they just run away. Nilesh, I want to do research with you. I say, yeah, do the research. Find out what these references are. And don't come to me. Just create a YouTube video, write a paper, write a blog. Don't look for some like what you call brownie points every minute. You are not ready for this research. I mean, do this for 20 years and then maybe you and me can talk. If somebody looks at these references, 12, 13, 9, you will see this connection with all the snob places for Indology in the West. I have not seen those, by the way, guys, but I can tell you because that's how frequently I use and run into these references. Quickly, I'll just give you an example of a wrong conclusion, Adityaji. Here, Herodotus, an ancient Greek historian, mentions Indian cotton in the 5th century BCE. Okay, listen carefully. This is all fine, great. As a wool exceeding in beauty and goodness that of sheep. Okay, so far so good. So he's praising Indian cotton. Now look at the inference that has been drawn, more than likely drawn in this reference 14, whatever that is, paper, book, whatever. And I'm telling you how ridiculous is that reference. This could be true, but there is no reason to say that, oh, that is the inference you can draw. No, it's unscientific, it's illogical, it's darn stupid, which suggests that the fiber was not yet known in Greece at that time. What kind of logic is this? Like today I may see something like someone brings some piece of cloth like the Patagonia brand, and I would say, oh wow, this is so nice, and I wore it and it's so warm. And then you tell me, which that Patagonia uses all recycled material, right, to create the fiber. So when they hear that, and based on I'm saying, oh okay, so the Patagonia, those must be very tough times, that's why they were using recycled material. It will be a wrong conclusion. They are doing it as some sustainable initiative. Okay, or me praising Patagonia doesn't say that therefore I am not aware of any fiber until now. I mean, what kind of logic is this? But these kind of stuff in mainstream academia is done day in, day out. It's done in the morning, it's done at lunchtime, and it's done at dinner. Just wanted to show you. Just for the managing time, I'm already gone over time. I'll skip this and go fast quickly. But why are the folks surprised? Like if you see on the Twitter or Facebook, like everyone's saying, oh wow, oh, this is so fascinating, I didn't know that. Oh wow, what an amazing thing, what a great Indian civilization. Why these people need occasional shots of dopamine in some form, like some Raj Popat doing something with a Panini's grammar, or someone finding a fiber and a connection of Indian import to Israel. I mean, this is all good research, whether at Cambridge or wherever. But why every time this dopamine rush, and suddenly people will forget the next day and go back to watching, I hope not, but watching their Bollywood, another stuff or something like this. Why are folks surprised? Actually, the answer is very simple. Most don't read. Most look at everything, Aditya ji, as an entertainment, nothing more. And that's why they're surprised. And that is a part of that dopamine rush. I mean, they are looking for that dopamine rush. Somewhere they just get that excitement. I mean, it doesn't have to be dopamine, it can be oxytocin, like feeling good about yourself, oh thank God I'm born in India, kind of thing. And people who are really struggling with the lives, with the resources, I can understand. But what about the people who are actually doing way better than people in now so-called developed countries like America, Canada, Western Europe, and so on? There are many Indians who are doing a lot better than even people here. Quickly, if somebody thought, therefore, oh, finally we found the fiber and the use of fiber in the clothing going back to Mahabharata times, also, does that mean what were the Ramayana folks doing? Okay, well, and this is not even the evidence I'm showing right now is not from India. Okay, the remains of black, gray, turquoise, and pink colored bast fibers. Fiber. If you go to Mexico, Aditya, you would have seen, right? What is that plant? They use it for making tequila or whatever it is, right? It's such a wonderful plant. Like you take the fiber out, you can write on it, you can make clothing out of it. Wonderful fibers. So these bast fibers were found in a cave in Georgia, not the Georgia here, but the Georgia next to Iran, which is India, extended India, outskirts of India in the past, in the old times. But look at the timing, going back to 30,000 years. So we are not only talking of fiber, we are not only limiting ourselves to cotton fiber, but even the more sophistication of coloring them, like pigments. Okay, and the mood indigo, not mood indigo, sorry, that's the IIT festival, the what you call the blue indigo, right, and so on and so forth. So remains of black, gray, turquoise, yeah, so they were coloring them 30,000 years ago, guys. And everyone here thinks that the 30,000 years ago, here meaning around the world, especially India, only monkeys existed. That is the problem. Again, because they don't read, therefore they're surprised. Or see, this is the cave where they found it, by the way. And where is, just so that people know, it's not that far, because Georgia, nobody knows where it is other than Atlanta, Georgia. It is not far. Now, it right now appears like far because from India. But hey, remember 1947, then this is India. You go back another century, then this is India. You go back like 2000 years, then this is India, including Iran. You go to 7,000 to Mahabharata times, that is all Indian subcontinent civilization. Bhagadatta, that's a Sanskrit word, guys, who was in Iran. Okay, the Hittites and those names, even the names of Egyptian kings, you can see the connection. Same thing with the Greek language, same thing with Latin, and so on and so forth. These are multiple out of India migrations. So quickly look at like another one now on the east side, the China, going back to 26,000 years to 13,500 years. Again, fibers colored in different colors. I'll go a bit fast through this. Or in Turkey, like going back to 10,000 years. Okay, 9,400 years to this place. My point is, if I take these data points and I only took data points which are mentioned in this paper, there are many other data points. And I put Jaisalmer because it was considered on the Silk route. And I said, hey, we can map an ancient cotton route. So it's an ancient fiber route, it can be silk, it can be cotton, it can be some other types of fibers, doesn't matter, bark, vulcale, whatever we want to call it. And there was this back and forth going on. We just don't know, but look at what we have found. So like when you need to use a pigment, the pigment may not be locally available. But pigment comes from clay and certain types of stone. I mean, all kinds of things, vegetables, plants, and so on. So some places they don't have the plants, and that is just like the blue indigo, other colors, they are transferring. So it's not just the cotton, it's not just the fiber, it's not just the silk. That the precious jewels and stones, we see the descriptions of that in Ramayana and Mahabharata going back to 14,000 years ago, 7,500 years ago. This is like Mahabharata descriptions, Aditya how fascinating those descriptions are, like the blankets made out of the animal skin and so on, and the precious stones and precious jewels and whatnot. That's happening 6 millennium and 14 millennium, 13 millennium. And this is the line. So if you consider this as from the journey from the land, this is what you're going to look at. Keep in mind, this is only based on the evidence that we have, and even just from this paper. If you start, guys, putting together, you're going to find a very vibrant civilization going back to 7,500, 14,000, 25,000, 30,000. You can go on and on as you find evidence. But don't just stop there. I mean, use some logic. Somebody was pending in 30,000 BC that the evidence you found, it did not start on a suddenly day one. We have evidence going to 30,000. It could have started a long time before that. We just don't know. Okay, pramana taschartha pratipatte. We can talk of the evidence we have, but that doesn't stop us from building the conjectures, building the theories, predictions, and then testing them, and therefore looking for that evidence consciously. Now, we are talking only the land routes. Many, again, Western Europe don't think of it because they couldn't go. Like if you have seen, what is that? The Norwegian series, Vikings, like, they going from Norway to England was like a big deal, and not that long ago, 400, 500 years ago, less than 500 years ago, or whatever the timing is, maybe less than 1,000 years, last 10,000 years. Compare that with sophisticated ports in India, work of Professor Ramaswamy, going back to 20,000 years. 20,000 years. So when you hear of Ravana going around the world, not a surprise, guys. I mean, be fascinated, but don't just go into your cocoon of your limited intellect, limited ability to think and say, how is that possible? There is evidence. Now, if you don't want to believe archaeology evidence and don't understand astronomy evidence, guys, tough luck, you are doomed. Therefore, again, the other thing I said, therefore, how to do this? Hari Bhajane. There is no other choice. If people don't have a Shraddha, don't have a knowledge, don't have a capacity, don't have competency, what do you do? By the way, my good friend Wim Worsboom, I had invited him to a conference in Delhi 3 years ago, 2019, but we are connected for a long time. A wonderful book he has written, Abracadabra, and how the script went from India to outside to Europe. Okay, people should read that book. The engineering, of Western alphabet. Okay, the Eastern engineering of Western alphabet, or something like this. People should read that. But he has also written about the out of India migration not only happening on the land, but also happening through the sea. Like the place I'm showing you below there is Dwarka, Krishna's Dwarka. That's going back 7,500 years ago. But the Kusha study is actually going back 30,000 plus. And we truly don't know how far back we have to go to the time of a Manu or Sharyati or Anartha and those folks. Okay. So, yes, through the ocean also, by the way. And quickly, I wanted to say, is this just now cotton? Is this just now spice? Is this just the human genetics that is now showing out of India migrations happening for last 60,000 plus years? Not only in the Europe, but also going to Australia, East, Mongolia, and possibly, not possibly, we know that actually there is a data from genetic papers, a trail going all the way to South America. Okay, 2015 paper. But is it just limited to human beings? No, we know that that has happened to Zebu cows. Okay. Again, migrations before Ramayana, after Ramayana, before Mahabharata, after Mahabharata, post Mahabharata migrations, many papers in the recent times. But this is a mouse, a domestic mouse connected with agriculture, established agriculture, starting different varieties of them, starting from India and going in all corners of the world. The dating of this, time stamping of this going to different dates. Okay, I don't even say the dates. I want people to read the original paper of Bonhomie, but also many other papers on mouse migration to understand the variety, the variations, and how elementary this research is. So as it gets, the genetics gets refined, you are going to get many more insights. But this is in general, right? So the main center coalescence is in India and going everywhere around the world. But again, going back to the migrations, but also the civilizations. See, this is from the this is from the Ramayana times, 12,000 BC. This is from the Mahabharata times. And Aditya seriously joke, but jokingly, I want to say, I did not make this stuff. People say, where is archaeology evidence? Guys, this is archaeology evidence. Now, if you don't understand it, tough luck, you are doomed. That's what I will say. What evidence we have? We have evidence of a domestic Indian mouse going as far as the eastern part of Mediterranean, but not stopping there, going as far as France. Okay, this is the southeast corner of France. You see this evidence in Ramayana times, and that's is Indian mouse. An Indian mouse did not fly. Okay, it has gone with out of India migrations. These are migrations of agriculturists, established agriculture, because mouse, domesticated mouse, is connected with agriculture. And these migrations also through navigation, meaning on the boats who are carrying out these goods, and with that also the mouse can go. Okay, so all of this can be seen into this Ramayana times, going back to this 12,000 BC. You can also see this in the Mahabharata times. Okay, here, not so much. See, this is also interesting. This is my last point, Aditya, or one more. Interesting thing is this hollow circle, meaning the evidence is not that good. Okay, the dark means very solid evidence, and the gray is kind of in between. This is like a degree of testability, degree of corroboration, and precision, confidence, into the data. What is interesting is if you go to Ramayana times, you have a more confidence into the presence of Indian mouse in France. Then you have the same evidence, the confidence for the same evidence, presence of Indian mouse in France again. How can that happen? Well, it has simply to do with the different layers where you are finding that evidence. And the evidence that you have found for Ramayana times is not as good as you found even earlier times. Can that happen? Absolutely, it happens. This is a one example. Now, immediately people don't even understand this and start asking, oh, how come did it happen? Well, guys, think again. God has given us this brain. The Bhagwan has given us this brain to think. Now, I don't know the answer, but we can conjecture. What could be the possible reason? Possible reason could be the younger dryas. So younger dryas happened between these two dates. And that during that time, it was so cold there, especially in the Europe, that no activity happened. The agriculture activity might have died down. Therefore, there were no domestic mouse during that time, but they were there before and they were there after. Now you'll find lots of domestic mouse in Paris, I mean, or France, if you have been there. So my point is, something existed in this time that simply tells us it definitely existed then, but to in an immature fashion to make a predictions for the past is dangerous. I'm just giving you an example of that. A very solid evidence of domestic Indian mouse in France in 12,000 BC, but not in 6,000 BC. Solid evidence at Ramayana, not at the time of Mahabharata, which happened afterwards. Now, if some idiot therefore takes it, Ramayana happened later, Mahabharata happened first, what are you guys going to do? But that's what people do, all kinds of stupidity. Quickly, last slide. Now, in terms of the cultivation, establishment of agriculture, possibly playing out with the varieties, domestication of a cotton, I don't want to say, because we don't have evidence, that, oh, it's all happened in India. We don't know that, but we do know that it happened in India. So far, we looked at the empirical or archaeology evidence, but here is archaeology evidence, but also a literary evidence. The oldest text of humanity, Rigveda, there is a great sage named Grutsmanth. He is assigned, he's attributed with many simple, curious, but very ingenious inventions, such as the multiplication table, Adityaji, is because of Grutsmanth. Now, that's not to say there may not be people before him, and we don't know his timing. Definitely more than 22,000 years, that I can tell you with full confidence. Although I don't know his exact time, I can say definitely more than 22,000 years. Okay. And I'll not go into explaining why that is so. People can watch my videos. Most of the Mandal 2 of Rigveda Suktas are attributed to him. Possibly there are in Mandal 1 also, or if not, his name comes there. I have to go back and check. He was the son of whoever, that detailed information is there. But was something quickly I want to conclude on this is that I don't know what evidence has been used, but I have read from some great acharyas of India that this Grutsmud was from central India. So Adityaji, you have a connection with this place. And I think we have talked about this in some other context before. I don't remember the context, but you know where? And if I say the name, you will immediately smile. The name of the place is Yavatmar. And, and in Yavatmar district, there is a place called Kalam. And, it is attributed as if like it is a place of Grutsmud. I don't know based on what evidence, but some great acharyas have said it. And if no other evidence exists, until additional evidence comes, we should be willing to change our mind. But until then, perfect to go with a Shraddha. So I'm going with a Shraddha. Okay. So that's now something very neat I found. And I noticed this long time ago. By the way, this is a cotton flower and these are the cotton balls, finally when it turns it into the final product to be harvested. There is a brand, okay, and anyone can go and type in a Google or Amazon or some online sites. Grutsmud, that same name, and he is the one. He should be credited, like you say, father of the domesticated cotton or agricultural cotton. So in fact, there is a what you can say conjecture that the Gossypium, the cotton varieties, they start with the Gossypium arba, whatever like that. The Gossypium is basically a upabhransha of Grutsmud. Okay. Now some people will say, how can, Grutsmud and Gossypium, such a huge difference. How can that upabhransha happens? Well, people have to only know how Socrates becomes Sukrant, okay, or Lakshman becomes Lakhan, and actually you can go with many words which have, when they go from one place to another, they are beyond recognition. Okay, I mean, we can say yoga becomes yoga. That's not that bad. But like a pandit here becomes like a pandit or something like this. And you see these modifications with many words. Sairandri Pat becomes serendipity, So there are many examples of that. But very impressive, I found. I don't know who created this, but whoever created this did definitely a great thing in remembrance of that very creative, ingenious mind, Grutsmud, one of the great sage of Rigveda. My apologies, Adityaji, for going over time, but with that, I want to stop and you can conclude.
According to the modern archaeologists and researchers, looks like the kings never had clothes before. Few thousand
Good
years
one.
ago, kings and queens had no clothes. And so, how can they explain that the mummy is in Egypt? so old, they say, and are properly clothed with silk and other things.
Yes.
And by the way, I have a close connection with textile because my father was a textile engineer. So,
Well, I said Yavatma, I didn't elaborate, but so
so one question comes in. So, for those people who think that the kings had no clothes and people are living in caves, the Vyasa Gufa, the caveman mindset, the Gufa means of all the places they could only search for one Gufa. Might be even a deer living inside the Gufa. But why connected to Vyas? Because they are trained to think in the European caveman mindset.
uh,
Yeah. And please come out of the caveman mindset and have an open mind, because outside the cave is open sky, the beautiful clouds, and don't use the caveman mindset in researching Mahabharata dates.
yeah.
If you believe in European stories, then I would request you to stay away from Mahabharata and Ramayana, because European stories have no connection.
Hmm.
In fact, I was telling about the Pyrrhic War, how Chandragupta Maurya's descendants, not
Hmm.
even him directly,
Hmm.
ruled. They defeated the Roman Empire during that time, and maybe the history should repeat again, because the colonization is too hard, too strong right now. We will
Yeah.
stop here, and Nirejji, thank you so much. And you just proved that the kings and queens had no clothes.
Emperors have no clothes, right?
Emperors had no clothes.
Very good. Well, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Aditya
Thank
ji.
you.
Namaste.